Welcome, everybody. I'll introduce myself since I've asked all of you to do the same. My name is Lena. I lead community here at Linear. And so I do events like this, as well as in-person events, and generally creating resources to help our community. I am joined here today by a number of my colleagues who I'll introduce, and you'll hear from them in their own voices during their segments during the event. But today we're joined by Quinn. Quinn is a part of our customer experience team and really offers a direct line of support for our users. Simone here is a member of our customer success team where she works with specific accounts and customers to ensure that they have everything they need to be successful on Linear. Sagan's joining us from our product team. And then last we have Gavin, who is one of our designers. And if any of you have used the mobile app, he has probably read some of your feature requests and either actioned it or thought about it. So those are our wonderful speakers today. What you can expect from all of us collectively is that we are going to be telling kind of the story and tracking the life cycle of a feature request from creation. You submit a feature request, what then happens to it, all the way to prioritization, and then finally implementation. We'll be covering all of the features and tools and tricks that we use on our team, as well as some tricks that we've learned from our customers. We will also be giving an introduction to, if you haven't seen Sagan's video already, we'll be showing you our new customers feature as well. Right. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Quinn, who's going to tell us about the birth of a feature request. Quinn, take it away.
Thanks, Lena, and hi everyone. Thanks so much for joining. It's awesome to see that there's nearly 100 people here. As mentioned, my name is Quinn. I'm part of the small but mighty customer experience team here at Linear. And as a member of the customer experience team, many aspects of my role involve working with customers to help field and surface the feature requests that they may have. So Linear, of course, has been vital in collecting that feedback so that there's a place to record and reference all the requests over time. And of course, a way to follow up to customers once a feature actually ships. So when a customer writes in, there's a few entry points that we use to turn it into a feature request. At Linear, for example, we have a Slack community with thousands of customers, and our Slack integration allows me to turn any request in there into a Linear issue in a couple of seconds. And the same will go for Intercom or other support tools that your customer experience team might use, like Zendesk or Front, as we integrate with those too. All right, let me share my screen here and show you an example Slack workspace. All right, so this is a demo workspace, but if you do have a Slack community or a Slack workspace with your customers, you might have a product feedback channel. And for example, imagine a customer in your Slack community writes in to request German as a language support option in your product. You can create an issue here using the Slack integrations that Linear offers. So you'll see this 3-dot actions menu in Slack when you hover over any message, and you can easily create the issue here in the drop-down menu. This will open up a modal where you can fill out anything that you need. I'll just leave it as default now. We're actually going to send it into Linear into a dedicated feature request team. You'll note that the title actually gets automatically turned into a nice title based on the text there. So even if that was a long text from a customer, it'll get summarized into a nice, easy to read title there. And you can fill out a description or anything else that you need there. But for the purpose of this demo, I'll just leave everything as it is. And I won't actually submit it because I've already created it earlier. So you'll see once you create the issue, we'll post it back to the thread in Slack. And what's nice about this is any comments posted here will get sent across to Linear, and any comments in Linear will come back to Slack. So it's an easy way to communicate with those people who work from Linear or to gather more information from your customer. All right, so let's open up Linear and see what it looks like. As mentioned, we've set up this dedicated feature request team that you'll see here. And any integrations, created issues will go straight into triage view by default. And when it's in triage, this can help us decide whether to accept the idea or to surface potential duplicates if it's already been asked for in the past. And here we can see it's actually detecting an already created issue. So there's already a duplicate issue here. And I'm going to mark this as a duplicate. Mark the current issue as a duplicate because it's already been asked for in the past. And we can open up this. Now we can see the feature request there. It's been asked for in the past. Other customers have asked for it. It's brought across the Slack community request also. You can also collect and tag various requests using labels. Maybe other teams like engineering prefer to track teams this way. For example, here's a useful view for our mobile team to know all the various requests that have been tagged with mobile labels. All right, so in my role, I'm generally helping the support frontline in Intercom, Slack, or other channels with our general user base, but my colleague Simone will talk next and elaborate on handling feature requests throughout the life cycle of a customer she's working with directly as a customer success manager assigned to specific accounts. Thanks all. I'll pass it over to Simone.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction, Quinn. As Quinn mentioned, I am a dedicated point of contact for some of our customers throughout the length of their journey with Linear. So from their initial implementation and then onward as they scale and grow their use cases with Linear over time. And often part of what that motion looks like is uncovering areas of friction in their workflow and strategizing on how they can better implement with Linear. Sometimes that means feature requests. What they're looking to do is not necessarily supported today. And so it's really important that I'm able to advocate for my customers, file feedback on their behalf, and also follow up with it over time. So I'm trying to make sure I accurately represent how important an issue is to a customer that I work with. And I'm also doing things like kind of uncovering trends. So maybe I'm repeatedly hearing the same feedback from a multitude of teams. It's on me to coordinate with someone like Sagan to escalate that there's a common area of concern amongst a similar type of customer. So I'll show you what my workflow looks like. My workflow is largely based around our new customer requests feature, which some of you may or may not have seen. We launched it earlier this week, but we've been dogfooding it here at Linear for a little while now. So something that I've used personally for some time. So let's say I have a call with a customer tomorrow and I want to check and see what did this customer ask for in the past? Do I have any updates for them on relevant feature requests? I'll open our customer menu. So I'll hit GQ on my keyboard and go to our customer page here. And you can see that this shows me like a list of the customers we've tracked into Linear. Let's say I'm meeting with Edge AI. They're a pretty important customer. They're enterprise. They have a lot of users. I'll go ahead and click into their customer page where I can see some relevant information about them, like what Slack channel we use to communicate with them. And then here is a catalog of all of the requests they've made in the past. And you'll notice that some of these have a little orange triangle icon that indicates that this has been marked as an important request. So something I might do, I'm preparing a chat. I'll go and I'll check in on their most important requests. I'll look to see if there's anything in progress. I can see a high level view of exactly what was the feedback we filed here. If it comes from a tool like Intercom, I can link out to that original request, or Slack, I can link out to Slack. So I can get myself up to speed before our conversation. So let's say I go in here and I see that workspace switching was an important request that is still currently in a backlog state. And I want to check in on this and see if there's any relevant updates here. So I'll open up that issue, which you can see is like pretty simple. It's in our feature request team. I can see it's part of a project, which is always a good signal for me. I can check what other feedback have other customers provided. And then I'll often go and look and see like, what's the conversation around this request? What's the discussion here? And so I can see that Gavin and Sagan have already been discussing this request, and that Gavin has made some mock-ups here of how we might be able to support this. So what I'll probably do is say like, hey, Gavin, I'm meeting with at Edge AI. I can tag the customer tomorrow. Can I show them these mockups for feedback? So this is like a really great mechanism for us over time to keep our customer success team up to date on, which features are moving towards beta. Can we include customers in that beta? Has our thinking here changed for how we might address an issue? Have any workarounds come up? So really, there's often a follow-up here beyond the initial logging of that feature request. So let's say I have my meeting with Edge AI and they've given me some new feedback. There's a couple of ways that I personally might log that in Linear. It might look similar to what Quinn showed. So I might be turning like a Slack message into a request in Linear, but maybe I've had a call and I've just like made notes for myself. And so I actually want to go directly to Linear to file that feedback. I can do that from the customer page. So you'll see there's like a request section up here at the top where I can add a new request. And let's say they've asked for German language support. If I go ahead and add this request, it's automatically going to move to triage as a new request, very similar to exactly what Quinn just showed you with creating a new request from Slack. This is a good motion for me because I know our product team is notified every time a new issue is added to triage. So I know that they'll see this request and be part of that process of managing it and understanding how it might fit into our existing plans. So that's a pretty good motion for me. I usually go a step further and check, is there already an existing issue for this? And I might go directly to that issue instead of filing a new request. And there's a couple of reasons that I might do that. So if I go, I'm going to confirm I don't want to file this. So I'll have to go to that request index that Quinn mentioned. I know we have a section for internationalization, and I'll check, and oh, German language support is already on here. And then I'd add the request for Edge from here. And I can add the Gong link from here as well. So often I'm pulling in like a Gong snippet to add that extra context. I often do this because I like to check the other linked requests. We often have a bunch of requests from Intercom linked here, and our customer experience team, Quinn and others, are really on the front lines of the feedback we hear day over day. And so they often have really great, well thought out responses to common requests. So this serves as like an information repository for me. I can check, like, have we suggested workarounds to other customers? Have we said anything to them about a rationale for why we do or don't offer a certain feature? And it really just provides me with a lot of information to better educate myself on how to respond to a given request. So it makes me better able to do my job here. I participate in the conversation around how we're building our product over time, which as a customer success person is always a big win working with any product and engineering team. So yeah, that's my workflow for getting that information into Linear and kind of following up on it over time. Okay, I will pass it off to Megan.
Cool. Thank you. So really as a PM, there's sort of two main things to think about when it comes to feature requests. The way that we think about this, oftentimes as a PM or a product team, the role that we have is really continuous discovery as number one. And that sort of breaks down into this, active discovery or passive discovery, which I'll talk about. And then the other one is making sure that what we're building is aligned to commercial goals or business strategy, where the company wants to go. And so from a feature request standpoint, on the first part, doing continuous discovery, we do this in sort of two ways. The more passive version is what we talked about, where Quinn or others are fielding all this stuff that's coming into us through support channels, just lots of requests, people using the product, and it's all hitting that triage, and I'm seeing it. Like I see everything that you guys submit. We read it, we figure out what to do with it, we file it just like Simone showed in this general feedback index, that sort of thing. On the other side of that, we might have some hypotheses around what we should build that's more maybe sales or CS mediated. So we might be saying like, hey, we have this idea. It seems like there's something here. This is maybe aligned with some strategy. Let's go find the customers that we want to speak to do discovery, ask specific questions, really dig into their pain points, understand their needs, et cetera. But at the end of the day, both of these things fall under feature requests. Like we learn, we do active discovery, passive discovery, we eventually come up with this list. And so that's sort of how everything comes in, and I'll show you this. And then on the other side, it's like, again, making sure that all aligns to where the business wants to go. And so I'll share my screen and kind of show you how we think about this in Linear and how you can map these concepts, and then ultimately how we end up prioritizing things. Starting here, this is on the initiative level. And I won't talk too much about this, but from the making sure this maps to a business goal or a commercial goal or strategy, we have this idea here, for example, of we've identified some opportunity around maybe expanding the user base to a leadership persona, right? So that's something the company is thinking about. We found out there's probably some opportunity there. We should figure out how we go after this opportunity. So this is the high level picture. On the more ground up or bottoms up approach, we're getting all these feature requests in. We're maybe going out and speaking to customers to understand their needs around this, given it's an initiative for us. And what I'm showing here is an issue list. And I can show you that this is called strategic customer requests. And if I edit this, you can see that this is customers with over 100K in revenue. So we're really thinking about these maybe more high value customers, right? And basically what this is showing me is all of the issues that have customer requests on them and that fit sort of that customer segment. And when you start to look at this, one thing you start to notice is patterns or some trends. And so right now, using our new customers feature, I can look at the display option here and you can see I have the customers display property on. And what that does is it gives me on the right side the ability to sort by these demand signals. So I have number of customers that have asked for this. We know how many of those are thinking it's very important to them. And then we have some sort of like idea of revenue roll up, and you can see the actual customers here. But when you look across all these, what you'll see is like, wow, a lot of these things as they hit triage, they were relevant to this mobile idea that we had for leadership roles, right? And so as they come into triage, if we have a project, we'll pull these things in to the project just to organize that way as well on the product side. And so when you look at this, the thing that stands out is, wow, we have a lot of demand for a lot of these things that are all about this iOS mobile app. And so we should probably think about prioritizing this thing on the roadmap, right? So if I click into one of these, this is the workspace switching issue. You can see, as Simone mentioned, there's a whole bunch of requests here for customers. And so you can go through one by one, get a really good understanding of what they're asking for. And then eventually what happens is once we decide like, yeah, this makes sense, we should probably build this, we spin up this project, or we'll take this project and we'll put it into planned, right? Or maybe even in progress. So we'll kick this project off. You can see that it has the initiative attached here, and we'll have the project team. And so here we'll write up the spec, we'll put the goals, we might even have some milestones. And then this basically gives the project team a starting point to think about how we might build this. Another thing I've done here is I've created a project view, and I've called this custom request. One nice thing about this is I can filter this to basically pull in all the feature requests that you saw earlier, and this becomes like a mini research repo for the project team. So this is where now we've decided we're going to build it. It's prioritized. Let's go in and figure out how to build it. And this is maybe where I'll pass it off to Gavin to have him dig in where he might go from here.
Thanks, Sagan. Yeah, so Sagan just covered how the product team uses the customer request feature to really hone in on what we're going to build. And at that point, I've either been collaborating with them or come to jump in on the workspace switching issue, for example. And as a member of the design team, what's going on in my head is there's probably 50 different ways that we can build what the product team has decided we should be building. And I want to use the customer request feature to figure out what is the correct way, what's the best way to do it from those 50. So I will share a little example here. We're back on our favorite workspace switching issue. If I'm designing this, the first thing that I'm thinking about is using this customer requests resource as kind of a repository to figure out what the nuances are from the requests and use that to help inform some design decisions. So I'll spare reading all of these, but as I read through these, the three main points I pick up from this is that customers, technically workspace switching already exists in the app, right? You can log out and log back in, but customers find that very slow, especially for an action they're doing multiple times a day. It's not really tenable to continually log out and log back in. So speed was of primary importance by reading all their feedback. Another thing is that customers are occasionally switching accounts as well as workspaces to either demo things or to work on multiple different, basically email-based accounts. And the third thing is that they're often doing these switches to check in on something quickly in another workspace, maybe their inbox, for example, or the status of an important issue. So I kind of dig through all of these customer requests and am able to pull out these insights and use that to inform the design decisions as I work on this project. So I've got a brief example here, and just to set the scene, this was a real example from developing our mobile app. I've anonymized the data here in the feedback, but this was how the actual design process for this feature went. So the first step I looked at was enabling workspace switching through settings. So you can see there's a new workspace row up top. When you tap on the menu, you get a bottom sheet that pops up and shows you all of the workspaces that are available to you. This was fine, but it doesn't really capture the fast aspect that a lot of customers were talking about. And that's because you have to go to the settings tab every time you want to do that. And it feels a bit removed from your general workflow. That led to thinking that we could add a shortcut to this menu from the Home tab, which is a much higher touch surface in Linear Mobile. So now you could long press on the Home tab, see the same sheet, and very quickly switch. But again, there's more nuances to this customer feedback that even this wasn't really capturing. And that was adding in multi-account support. So if we go back to settings and we redesign the sheet to support multiple email accounts, this lets us log into workspaces across accounts and have all of the workspaces show up to quickly jump around without ever having to log out. The final piece to this was adding an add account button in that sheet. So once you download the Linear app and you log in to all of the accounts, you kind of front load all that work. You really never have to log out again, and you can ideally access all of the different workspaces that you might need. The final piece of the puzzle, which we haven't built yet, but a quick sneak peek at a potential future, is really looking at the customer feedback again and noticing the why people were switching workspaces. I think it really boils down to wanting to check in on, say, your inbox or an issue in another workspace. So what if we could short circuit that whole workflow and think, if we show an unread count for notifications, if you see it 0, you might not even have to switch workspaces. And if you see there's 2 unread notifications, that's a good signal to spend the time and switch workspaces. So this is an example of how I love using the customer feedback requests as kind of a repository for insights to supplement my design decisions and user research. It's really become a valuable resource for the design team at Linear.
Wow. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been so informative. There are a lot of questions from the Q&A that you've already answered, but there are a couple really popular ones that I want to make sure we touch on. So first, people brought up, I made a list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 integrations that they'd love to see built in so that they can use customers with their other tools. Sagan, can you talk a little bit about what integrations we're planning to build or prioritize, and what are options for integrations that we're not necessarily planning to build right now? Can people use the API? What might they be able to do?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, right now we have support for support tools. So Intercom, Zendesk, Front. We also support email intake, which is something we don't talk about a lot, but there's a path for the customers feature for that as well. And then obviously Slack and Linear Asks, part of Slack. What is coming for us in Q1 is going to be, as I mentioned on the launch video this week, Salesforce and HubSpot, so CRM integrations. And then there's obviously a long tail of other CRM or support tools. We've had a lot of conversations around this. I think you can probably count on a number of them building integrations themselves. And so we're having a few chats with a few others right now, and they're looking to actively plug into this. So on our end, we'll be building Salesforce and HubSpot as the next one. And then you'll probably start to see a few others that are built by the companies themselves.
And quick follow-up, is the email route just forwarding to the team, or how do we use that? I think Quinn, actually, you might be most familiar with that feature if you want to give like a 10-second spiel, and we can drop a link to the doc in the chat.
Yeah, basically we'll go by default into triage if you have it enabled, and if not, it will go into your backlog. And it's only an intake, so you can't reply back to the email, but you can send emails into Linear, and you can generate a Linear email address on a per team basis in your team settings.
With the new customers request feature that we shipped, we will also be able to create customers from that. So if you're using email intake and there's no customer for someone at customerx.com and you have it turned on, we will actually take that, we'll get the domain, and we'll create customer X in Linear and then attach those things together. So that's what I meant by we also support email intake for customers feature.
Great. Thanks. Gavin, I have one for you, which looks like you're already thinking about the response to this. So someone asked about suggestions on how to use customer requests to capture the why rather than just the what of a feature request. Do you want to answer that out loud?
Yeah, sure. I was just typing a response, but happy to answer it here. I think it can be a little bit tricky. Ideally, you can capture some of the why from the actual customer request and the feedback. In cases where you can't, sometimes you can piece it together from multiple different requests And sometimes it's really just helpful to follow up directly with the customer and dig further with some questions. But overall, I think the large benefit of the feature from that design perspective is having all of those requests in this one centralized area, like right where I'm working, can constantly refer back to it. I don't have to go fishing around Slack or around Linear or talking to my colleagues to piece together their info. It just lives in one central repository. And because the product team, a lot of the time, has gone through and determined these are problems worth solving and here are the related requests, you can trust that a lot of it's very high signal. So I find that workflow, it's a little bit hit or miss, but ideally the feature makes it much easier to piece together the why.
Thanks. I recognize we don't have any engineers in this call, but I know between Sagan and Gavin, you are handling that handoff and also the life cycle of projects once engineering gets the project. So we have a couple of people asking, one, how do feature requests move out of the feature requests team and into engineering, or do they? And then two, what does the engineering team approach those feature requests any differently than, say, how Gavin's kind of acknowledging the way he reviews that feedback to inform how he ends up designing it? So question one, where do they go once we've decided to implement them and hand it off to engineering?
Yeah, I can answer this. So in the screen share that I had, I showed you that project view on the top of that iOS project that said customer requests, right? And that's like the filtered view of all the requests that came in that just live there for people to refer to and have all the good information on. I don't think there's a right answer for this, but if you're thinking about like a bug workflow, right? Like the bug comes in, it's an issue, it's a very clear thing, it's probably a one-to-one solution, like go fix the bug. A lot of times, like an engineer will just pick up that exact issue and then do all the work in that issue and then go ship the thing. And then we close the loop pretty seamlessly. With these, it's a little bit different, hence the question, right? So in some projects where this acts more as a research repo and it's sort of like a thing to refer back to, sometimes like we don't touch them and that's like the only thing they're there for, which is really just good to have and track the customers and all that sort of stuff. And then engineers will come in and like actually create issues to go and then ship or develop that make all these things true, or that like basically satisfy all the requirements of the project. And then maybe at the end of the project, we go in and mark these things as completed feature requests and we can follow up with the customers that way. So that's one way to think about it. Sometimes it's not the case and sometimes it's a mix. Like sometimes the things that come in are actually pretty directly, workable, where you don't have to go create separate issues and you can actually just do the work right on those issues. That works too. And oftentimes in a project, we'll see some combination of it where someone will pick something up and it's fine that way too. I'm not dodging the question, but I think whatever makes sense for your team and the ways that you want to work. Like if your engineering team wants to create their own issues because they name them differently or whatever it is, I think that's a very perfectly fine way to do it. You just have to make sure that you have the views set up so you're seeing all the issues and you're able to close everything out and close the loop.
Thanks, Sagan. So Sagan showed how he balances business needs with user needs, right? And what views he uses and what tools he uses in Linear to view that. From your end, are there any ways that you add importance or maybe priority to requests as they come in so that product knows how they should prioritize things even before they've triaged it themselves?
Yeah, that importance indicator is a useful kind of just like quick visual flag. But it's also on me to, in the context of that description, add details on if something is a blocking issue for a customer. And because they don't have access to it, what is the impact of that? Often there's a question of like how widespread is that pain, and are there other customers who are being impacted by it? So often I'm interacting in like the chat portion of the feature request to say like, hey, this came up with this person again. I've heard it from 3 customers this week. I'm seeing that folks are going out and buying another tool, or they're building something custom via API. What information do we need to better understand this use case so that it can be prioritized correctly? And then we often use those feature requests as like a forum for conversation amongst the team. So I might go to my team and say like, hey, I think this is really important feature request. Has anyone else heard something similar? Have you logged your feedback? Can you please log your feedback? Let's bring this up with customers proactively and just use that method to escalate accordingly. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you so much, Simone. By the way, you can set up in like template, your bug reporting template to allow whoever's submitting it to indicate what that priority is, just so you always have it.
I do see a lot of teams using a template for their feature request that like specifically outlines what criteria they need in that feature request to accurately prioritize it. We are given a fair amount of flexibility on our side with the information that we add. So we don't necessarily use like a very built out template, and it's a little bit more free form, but a template is a really great way to provide that structure, especially for folks who maybe aren't necessarily like in linear day to day.
Okay.
Might be a good one for Sagan. The question was, do you plan to integrate a field to gather the business value of feature requests in a more detailed way?
I have many questions for whoever asked that question. If you send me a Slack DM in our community channel, I'm happy to chat more about that. We don't have so business value is a very generic or sort of general term. Like it can mean a lot of different things, right? Is it just revenue? Is it more of a strategy angle? It could change quarter over quarter, for example. So I think what that means to your company is probably different than what it means to other companies. I think what you tend to see with tools that try to give you ways to do this is something like a rice prioritization, for example, where you're looking at reach and like impact, but again, impact could mean revenue, it could mean other things, and try to have some sort of way to measure this or capture it. We don't have any near term plan right now. We've thought about a lot of this type of stuff, and a starting point for that is sort of what I showed you, where you can basically see it's not a rice score, but when you see that view that I showed you that has like, here are 10 customers that want this thing, that's reach basically. You see some idea of the impact or like the importance to those customers, and then you see some revenue numbers. That's like a pretty good demand signal. And so that's a starting point. Whether we go deeper on that, we don't have a near-term roadmap for that, but we think about this stuff pretty frequently. So stay tuned, I guess, and always happy to chat more if you want to shoot me a DM.
Highly recommend join our community Slack. You'll get more updates and direct contact with the team. Let's see. Here's a good one from Leonie. Are there any plans to provide an AI feature that collects the customer requests and summarizes them? I know a lot of folks do this across platforms, but how are you thinking about it in Linear?
Yeah, you can imagine we've thought a lot about this as well. There are a lot of different flavors of this. There are other tools that are trying to do this as well. It's something we are experimenting with. We would also like to be able to do some nice summaries and make some of these workflows a little bit more lightweight, or at least give some guidance around, you can imagine an issue or a project that has, 100 requests. Like, how do you make sense of this sort of thing from the PM side? And so I think it's something we're definitely thinking about. We are having discussions pretty regularly about it. I'm not going to make any promises on timelines or anything, but I will say that there's a good way to do it, and there's just the throw AI on it way to do it. And we're clearly not about the latter. So we're just trying to be very thoughtful about how we approach something like this. But yeah, we're definitely thinking about it.
Okay. That's all the questions we have. Again, if you have any additional questions, do not hesitate to reach out to us. But a huge shout out to Quinn, Simone, Gavin, and Sagan for sharing all of this knowledge. And thank you to Alexandra, who was behind the scenes helping answer questions and join the chat. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. We're so glad you're making use of these features, especially the customers feature, and we hope you continue to enjoy them. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.